when did you guys start the Santa Cruz Surf Club, and who was the person who was the creative force behind that?
I could pick that up and point to the young man that really got things going in junior high school. And the fellows made their boards in the school shops, and we got a few local early day guys got together that enjoyed surfing and formed the club. And as early as 1936, it was active in the late 30s and through the 40s, the club was. But Harry, one of the very first, and Bob came in a little later, and there were 27 members totally, and I was the last.
You were number 27?
I was number 27 because I'm younger. These guys are old guys.
Why only 27? Did something happen that?
No, I don't know.
The war that happened then, or?
I think we started to. People were getting married and all
The war.
Most of the guys were in the Second World War.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I was the last one.
But Harry was the one in high school that would say, "Surf's up," and about 20 guys would leave school, and away we went.
Oh my gosh. So was it easy to find somebody to surf with back then, or?
No, there was 20 guys maybe, and that was
Yeah,
it. You did,
on that subject, I live in a senior center, and a new sister just moved in that used to be a teacher in the 60s back here at Holy Cross. And she said she used to have trouble keeping the guys after school, after class, because they're all surfers, the bell rang and they were gone.
Some things never change. That's amazing. Now, what year was all this happening in? It was like the 1940s, 1930s?
Well, our club was very popular in the late 30s and 40s.
Wow.
Yeah, of course, the war, 1941, broke us all up. And a lot of guys didn't come back. Nobody got killed, but didn't come back. Married, college, working, going to college out of town.
Now, Harry, you were in the Coast Guard, or I remember
Yeah,
Bob was telling a story one time about your tour of duty in
I was in the United States Coast Guard and got stationed in my hometown. 28 months out of 38 in the service. 28 months of it was right in Santa Cruz. Slept and ate ashore, what they call subsistence. Had port and starboard duty, 24 hours on, 24 hours off.
let me explain it, Harry. You're not doing a good job of telling your own life story. It was day on, day off. The day he was on duty, he had to get up early and check out all the fishing boats going on. And then we were all out, and he had nothing to do except go lie on the beach with the rest of the surfers. The next day, when it was time for him to be off duty, where was he? He was on the beach with all the surfers. He did that during the war. Oh, he lived at home and got subsistency for living at home. And he complained every day that he had tough duty. You interrupt me if I told a lie.
This is like a transition time, 30s and 40s. They were going from, I remember there was a lot of redwoods around back then. I've heard there were transitioning into the hollows and the balsas, lighter weight solid boards.
The balsas wasn't until after the war to get the balsa wood out of the old life rafts.
From surplus. Balsa with a redwood stringer.
So with that,
Those were the planks.
Planks, they were called planks.
The planks came in and they were really quite heavy.
Yeah, they were. But they're 11
But
foot.
balsa was the popular thing because it was a lighter wood.
A lot lighter than redwood.
Yeah.
But it was a stringer of redwood and then balsa. I mean, the length of the board.
Yeah.
So they would laminate.
Laminated together.
Yeah.
And they were still heavy, though. They're very heavy.
Well,
Around 100 pounds.
Yeah.
Some of them are more, some of them a little less, but around 100 pounds.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
the board, the surfing sculpture, the model was
Yeah.
Richie Thompson's
Or
plane.
was it?
Yeah, so if you see that surfing sculpture out on West Cliff, that board was really, it's enlarged a little bit. It wasn't quite that big, but the shape, and it was taken from a Surf Club member, Richie Thompson's plank. So that's what a plank looked like.
That's a beautiful sculpture. You guys are responsible for that, the Santa Cruz Surf Club.
That was a lot of work. I mean, Doug and I were co-chairman of that thing. But everybody pitched in to raise. Did that cost $75,000?
I think so.
About 75,000, which we thought it was going to be about 15,000, maybe when surfers decided to do that. But by the time we got permission from the city and the permits and the thing done, it went from that to about 75,000. Who sold all the T-shirts?
Philco and Bob and Jack O'Neill
Yeah.
donated the shirts, and then Phyllis's
She was the one that sold those.
and Bob Gillis
Yeah.
sold them thousands of dollars worth.
Oh, yeah. And everybody popped in some money and
Yeah.
merchants
Bob
donated
made
to
some
it.
Contribution. And
Well, we all did.
This was in the 1980s?
that was in 1992. We had the dedication, and May 23rd of 1992, and actually it commenced in, I think around 87 or 88. And the first meeting was down at my office in the late afternoon. We had coffee and cookies.
I'm going to interrupt that because I was just thinking, Doug, you never mentioned about your hamburger stand on Beach Street. You used to have a hamburger stand. When was that?
June, July, and August of 1955.
You flipped a pretty good hamburger.
Anyway, that was I had been lifeguarding earlier before I went on my active duty with the Navy, and when I came back, I thought I'd try a little business before I went back to college for my master's, Cal College. Anyway, that's quite an experience.
Yeah.
Well, one of your members, was it Murray, used to be part of a show at the boardwalk?
Yeah.
Where you,
They did the fire dive.
Harry Murray, Don Patterson,
Freddie Quadras.
Pretty quadrus.
Freddie Crodvis, Bill Litterdale,
But
Several of the members
Bos-
were our Surf
Don
Club
Bosco
members.
Patterson, are all members of the water carnival doing diving, fire diving, swimming, clown,
Acrobatics.
and
canoe
Ian.
fights.
I remember a story about Harry Murray, who was doing a fire dive or something, and
Well-
he couldn't let go of the trolley?
oh,
or-
that was from the
Slide
top
for
of the
life.
casino to the pleasure, end of the pleasure pair, slide for life. And they even did it on fire.
So you-
One time Bosco couldn't let, hands were burning, but he couldn't let go until he got out over the water to let go of Harry Murray.
Now, that was a cable from,
If you, next time you go down by the boardwalk and you look up the highest point on the main building, the Coconut Grove, and from that, it was a pleasure pier out there, 100 yards, 200
It
yards.
was about a third of the length of the wharf.
there was a long cable.
And it came out close to the center of the boardwalk.
So,
And speedboat rides, Stag Narrows ran things out there. The water pipe for the salt water
plunge.
for the plunge, they warmed the salt water and held that pipe. And then, of course, when you spoke about the Slide for Life, they had a little platform on the top of the coconut grove up there where that all started, and a wire that went out to the end of the pleasure pier. And it came over across the building, across the beach, near the bandstand, and on out to the end. And Bosco Patterson would ride that thing with Harry Mayo hanging on his legs.
Not Harry Mayo.
I mean, Harry Murray. Hanging on.
Not me.
They asked
They
him-
let go just before they hit the wharf, end of the wharf.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
So the night with them on fire was quite a spectacular thing.
So he actually lit himself on fire?
Oh yeah, they were soaking. They wrapped them in cloth, burlap, and soaked in kerosene, I guess, or something.
Yeah.
And he would ride the trolley all the way out to the water?
The combination of the aquacade, they sold tickets, of course, in the plunge. There were seats all around it, several hundred people in there, and it was a paid deal to go in and see the water carnival. And the grand finale was Bosco Patterson coming out in a fire dive into the plunge. From a tower on top, he'd come through a hole in the roof.
They cut a hole in the roof, and that's where he dove through from it.
And they'd light him. He was wrapped in burlap and soaked in kerosene. They'd fire him and he'd take off. It was very, very exciting.
Amazing.
Well,
You wouldn't do that today. OSHA
no,
would have something to say about
I
it.
It'd be
don't.
hard getting a permit for that. So now, I've heard rumors that Harry was one of the few surfers in the Santa Cruz Surf Club that didn't know how to swim.
That's true. Yeah.
I think he knew a little bit
Well,
how
he
to
could-
swim or he wouldn't
Well,
be with us.
He could make his way through the water.
I think so. I think he's here, isn't he? He didn't drown.
And he
I
had
put-
this, a paddle board that had the wrong size plug in it or
Yeah,
something?
didn't we, well, I'll tell it anyway. So it was one of these days, it was real foggy out there, very, very foggy. And Harry and I decided to go out. I don't remember anybody else around particularly. So we go into the fog. We both get our boards out of the board house. And he picked a different board. Those old boards, they had a cork in it so you could get the water out of them because you made them yourself and they leaked a little bit. So we take off, Harry and I together paddling out. And when I look around, I can't see Harry. I take off, take a ride, and I come back. When I come back, I'm going out. I still don't see Harry through the fog. And then I hear him. He says, "Help! Help!" Like 2 or 3 times. Harry, over here. And I look over right about where the surfing statue is now. There was a cave. And Harry, I paddle over, and there Harry is. I can see him through the fog. His board's down, and he's like this, just shivering like that. And what had happened, the board he took out had a cork on both ends, and he didn't notice that. So he put a cork on one end and went out. So as soon as he hit the water was going in the end of his board. So before he even got all the way out, it filled with water. So I got in there with him, and he could hardly move. There was suction there from the board on the sand. It took us both to pop that thing loose and get it up and get him out of there and get him on the board and push him in and got in. So they had a special meeting of the surfing club, and they were going to disband me from the club because they really weren't sure that I should have saved him. True story.
How do you respond to that, Harry?
They never did forgive him.
As I look back on it, That was a wonderful scene down there at Cowles Beach because our clubhouse became the hub of surfing for Northern California. It had a volleyball court out in front, nice deck out in front, and a place to store some things inside, and a board house, and hundreds and hundreds of people on the beach. It seemed to be more popular back in those days, didn't it? Cowles
it was
was
the main-
the
yeah.
beach
Yeah.
for the young people to
All the
attend.
kids.
It was packed.
Yeah.
Yeah, and of course that's where the surf was, and it was wonderful.
Pretty cool.
You mentioned cars earlier, how we carried the boards and so on.
Right. How did you guys move from?
Well, some of the guys had turtleback cars, and I don't think there was a surf rack early days. I had a flat roof 1929 four-door Chevy, flat roof, and I'd tie it up and run through the windows. But and also on the highway, you see somebody with a surfboard in the car, you'd pull over and talk. You know, it was kind of unique.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We had some highway surfers put the boards on the roof of their cars, drive over, never put them in the water. They're just highway surfers.
Weekend warriors. So, what do you guys think about the history of Santa Cruz is changing right now because of the work that Kim Stoner and Jeff Dunn and Mac Reed, finding out that there were Hawaiian princes surfing here 130 years ago. The trigger for this whole thing about the three princes.
Yeah, he went to Hawaii and got permission to go to a warehouse and look at these boards. Took pictures and measurements and everything.
It's kind of changed the history. You're a part of the town that actually started the whole surfing scene in America.
Well, this was it in Northern California. Southern California people actually surfed, I think, a little bit sooner.
But not
San
before.
Onofre, a spot, there's a club down there, and Malibu.
Well, would it be true that the princes were the first surfers?
In the United States
in
that
the
we
United
know of in
States? So
1885.
So it started in California.
Yeah, it started-
on the San Lorenzo River.
Right down at the point.
And then those rascals down south tried to get away with it.
Yeah, and it
So
was
they're the spot.
July of 1885 when the three princes.
Well, Huntington, when they finished his railroad, hired a guy from Hawaii to come and surf down south. And they look at it as that's the first surfing. But princes surfed here way before that.
We don't like to stress on the